I am so angry at this movie. No, 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 no. It isn't bad. It is stunning. It is emotionally intense, thrilling, beautiful, and incredibly unique. Sunshine came this close to being perfect. This close. But that ending, that ending, that ending ruined a near perfect movie. For that ending, screw you, Sunshine. You're spectacular. Now, continuing on from the Dark City Reviews theme, this Sci Fi Spotlight is going to be about a great science fiction movie hiding in the shadow of a lesser one, or in this case, lesser ones. Sunshine is a science fiction movie distributed by Fox Searchlight Pictures. Although a critical darling, it was a financial flop that only made $32 million on a budget of $40 million, which doesn't include marketing costs. Once you subtract the 50% that the movie theaters get, this means that Fox Searchlight lost upwards of $24 million making this picture, but still that's small potatoes by Hollywood standards. This film was written by Alex Garland, who had previously worked with director Danny Boyle and star Cillian Murphy on 28 Days Later. Since then, he has gained greater acclaim for writing and directing last year's indie sci-fi darling, Ex Machina. While I did have my problems with that film, I do have to applaud him for being one of the few indie filmmakers who is bringing real attention to the genre of hard science fiction. You know, the realistic side of the genre that's been getting one or two high-budget films a year since 2013. You know, films like Gravity, Interstellar, The Martian, and this year's Arrival and Passengers, and the multitude of movies that are coming out next year. What I like about his script is that he brings that sort of indie cerebral perspective to a genre that is usually inhabited by either Ridley Scott or meatheads. So, given that box office, unless you're some nerd like me who watches obscure science fiction movies for an internet show, you probably haven't seen this movie. However, I can guarantee that you've probably heard it, or at least its theme anyway. Adagio in D minor from the soundtrack of Sunshine is probably one of the most famous compositions of any recent movie. You might have heard it in the trailer for a number of films, such as X-Men Origins Wolverine, The Adjustment Bureau, Star Trek Into Darkness, The Mortal Instrument, Civilization 6, Gravity, and X-Men Days of Future Past. You might have also heard it in episodes of The Walking Dead, the movies Lovely Bones and Kick-Ass, and in the episode of The Fringe. I don't even know what some of that stuff is, but it's everywhere. Honestly, if you actually listen to the soundtrack, you can understand why. It's a really great theme. The only shame is that it overshadows a movie that is just as good as the composition itself. Danny Boyle, the director, is a little bit more of a mainstream talent, with his best-known pictures being 28 Days Later and Trainspotting, but since then he's been mostly operating in the Oscar bait genre. In that realm, you might recognize him for directing The Good, one of the two biopics about Steve Jobs, and also directing crossover hit Slumdog Millionaire. And because nobody in Hollywood is immune to sequels, even Oscar talent, he's working on his sequel, Trainspotting 2, or T2. Because there's no great sequel that already exists called T2. Nope, none at all. You know, it's also really funny to look at this movie that came out before the current superhero movie craze, but has many actors from that superhero movie craze in it. Post-Fantastic Four, but pre-Captain America, Chris Evans stars in a desperate bid to prove that he has artistic integrity, alongside Rose Byrne, future Mary McTaggart, as well as Benedict Wong, future, Wong from Doctor Strange. And if you look hard enough, anybody who is anybody in Hollywood and in this movie has been in some sort of comic book movie. From that perspective, it's almost a letdown that the main character is the guy who played Scarecrow in Batman Begins. So this dream team of actors plays a dream team of astronauts. In the near future, the sun is dying because, we need a plot. These astronauts are our last hope to survive. They pilot the Icarus II, a ship carrying a payload designed to restart the sun. Now it's take two on the mission to restart the sun because the first ship mysteriously disappeared. Ooh. but as they approach the sun, they discover the first ship, the Icarus I, mysteriously still there. Because 2 giant nuclear bombs are better than 1 giant nuclear bomb, the crew of the Icarus II set course to investigate. And, as always, something goes wrong, which leads to something else going wrong, which leads to something else going wrong, which leads to a desperate struggle for survival. Hijinks ensue, blah blah blah. Let's be honest. If you've ever seen one of these hard science fiction movies before, then you know the plot. Things go wrong, they have last-ditch attempts to fix things, it kind of works, but someone is sacrificed and the mission is impacted, blah blah blah. Eventually, all but one of them are killed for the sake of the mission, you know the drill. If you've seen Gravity, The Martian, Interstellar, or 2001, or any of their bland knockoffs, you've seen this movie before. Still, as a member of this genre, it's one of the better ones. The action isn't like The Martian or Gravity or Interstellar, where the journey and visuals overpower the human drama. The action is actually pretty low-key. It isn't too flashy or overblown. Now, that doesn't mean it's bad by any stretch of the word, but the film knows how to downplay that in a way that highlights the emotion and the drama of the story over the visuals. In my opinion, this is why the film bombed, but it is also why the film is great. It places the importance of a human journey over the space stuff that these films focus on these days. Those visual effects sell tickets in China, you know. Who needs to study the human psyche when you've got a virtual spaceship to blow up? And that's the crux of this film. The toll that space travel takes on the human psyche. We're social creatures by nature. And that's why we've adopted dogs so readily. They're just like us. We need other people, but at the same time, we need room to be alone. But we can only have one or the other thanks to the limits of our technology. The way many of the crew react to that solitude of space is with their obsession over the sun. Sun mania is worst, ironically enough, in the ship's psychologist, who is tanning from exposure to the sun despite being closed off in a metal tin can. And Moira McTaggart, oh, so sorry, whoever Rose Byrne plays, dreams about the sun. It's all she can see when she closes her eyes. The sun is such a fundamental part of our lives, but we've never really experienced it at all. In that way, it could conceivably be a metaphor for God. I find this type of theme much more interesting than, hey, NASA should have more money! Or, that space trash is bad. I know that all these movies are supposed to be about the indomitable spirit of humanity or something like that, but who cares? We've seen that a dozen times before. A fetish for a giant ball of hydrogen that could blow you up in an instant is a lot more interesting, a lot more unique, to be honest. Sadly, the main character isn't that interesting. In fact, a slice of American cheese has more flavor than this guy. I know that he was pretty creepy as Scarecrow in Nolan's Batman movies, but I guess it's just that he can't play a good leading man. So off to Netflix you go, actor who I don't remember the name of. In Sunshine, you just keep looking over his shoulder to see if Chris Evans or Michelle Yeoh or someone else from the crew is the real star of the movie. Because, he can't be. Now, here is where we have to get into spoilers. Let's just say the ending sucks. If you don't want it spoiled, let's just stop at that. The ending takes a left turn from sci-fi suspense to a horror movie. It's just so stupid that the change is somehow worse than in Interstellar when Matthew McConaughey met the bookshelf from hell. Now, after this, spoilers are going to happen, so if you don't want this movie spoiled for you, stop here. Normally I hate to do this because I want you to look at these movies and experience them on your own, but I just have to because the ending is such an interesting element that I have to discuss it in detail. The ending in this movie was just so stupid! When the captain of the Icarus I shows up, Pinbacker or whatever his name is, this movie changes tone from a ghost story to John Carpenter's Halloween. He starts slashing and killing people like Freddy Krueger or something. They've even got the gimmick that's, supposed to make him scary, but doesn't really, which in this case is the lens flare and the burnt flesh. Now, I realized that the filmmakers had good intentions, and they were trying to expand on the whole sun motif with someone who worshipped it literally as a god, but it's just completely terrible. Basically, if you haven't seen this film, imagine if, in 10 Cloverfield Lane, after nearly 2 hours of realistic paranoia and suspense, suddenly they revealed the whole time it was aliens! Wait. This movie is just really hard to make up my mind on. Now, for the first 2/3, it is spectacular. But for that last third, it's just plain awful. Do I judge it on the first 2 acts or the final act? I don't know. But what I can do for sure is compare it to its peers. Now, when I was talking about this movie with my aunt, who is the only other film snob in my family, she asked me if the film was scientifically accurate. I replied that I didn't know. And she told me that she didn't want to see it if it wasn't scientifically accurate. Now, I'm sure she's got her reasons, and I'm sure she can explain them very logically, but this reason really infuriates me. This subgenre of realistic science fiction is very, very strictly judged on scientific accuracy, but somehow, when reviewing these movies, people forget to judge it on the basis of story and character. Now, The Martian is the best one of this recent crops because it actually remembers to have a main character, but it doesn't remember to have character development. Now, in my opinion, Sunshine is better than any of these recent crop. Again, I haven't seen Arrival or any of those. Because it remembers to pack a human story into space instead of just shoving humans into a space story. Because of that, I think you should check it out. I'm David, and this is Sci Fi Spotlight. Now, I don't know when the next Sci Fi Spotlight will come up, considering the huge backlog of scripts that I'm working through, but I know that it will involve a lot of paperwork. Don't forget to duplicate copies of 27B/6. I'll see you next time.